welcome to Upfront. My name is Fallon Wagner, and today we're talking about emergency preparedness in Lethbridge in southern Alberta. Today, for the first part of our show, we're joined by Luke Palmer. Now, Luke, I'll get you to introduce yourself and what your title is here in Lethbridge.
Well, my name's Luke Palmer. As you mentioned, I'm the Emergency Preparedness Manager. Right now, I'm only in my second month, but it's been a busy couple months and slowly getting my foot in the job here and looking forward to move forward in the role.
And now, what exactly does the role entail here for residents of southern Alberta?
So my job is mainly to focus on the city of Lethbridge. We have a couple plans in place in relation to disasters and how the city responds and handles not only the threat itself, but the handling of our residents and making sure everyone is safe, as well as our resources.
And now, what does a day in your job look like, and for you and your team?
A lot of it is networking. Big component of the job is networking, making sure that we have the pillars in place that are available on demand when something happens. If we need something, we know who to call, and at the same time, we've got facilities and continuity of our own operations to house individuals and make sure that our essential functions are still going and when they're needed.
And now, what would you consider the definition of emergency management?
Emergency management it's pretty broad. We can narrow it down looking at the control and management of resources in reaction to an incident. At the same time, it's a big planning component. We look at mitigation, preparedness, as well as the response and recovery functions and how it all comes together and it eventually works out to be effective incident management and keeps everyone safe, as well as the region.
And now, what is the municipal emergency plan?
So our municipal emergency plan is for Lethbridge specifically. This isn't a be-all, end-all document that tells us how to respond. It's more so of a framework. It dictates our responsibilities and authorities, and more so who does what, where do we get extra resources, and under that we'd have appendices that act as SOPs, standard operating procedures, that would, in a sense, be the more hazard specific appendices or functions of certain groups like emergency social services and evacuation planning.
And I know you said the plan's not the end-all be-all, so do you say that the plan's constantly evolving based on situations that have come up in southern Alberta?
For sure. Any emergency management document's going to be very fluid. It's going to be generally reviewed on an annual basis, but as we learn more, we're always going to go about changing that, making sure that it is fitting for our community. Emergency management is never complete. It's always evolving and always changing.
Absolutely. And now, what is the Emergency Coordination Center, and how does it affect residents?
So our Emergency Coordination Center is a big part of more so disasters. This is where we have catastrophic events that are impact, I guess, our population and property, environment, everything is greatly impacted. What it is we operate under an ICS structure all in one room. So ICS is Incident Command Systems, which we have different components of. So we'll have a Director of Emergency Management, we'll have an Operations section, a Planning section, Logistics section, and Finance Administration. And what this is, we have leaders who can collaborate together to provide the needs to the boots on the ground. We are able to coordinate what they need and make the calls to bring in outside resources and basically accommodate their needs to defeat whatever's happening.
And so, what would activate the center?
More than likely, this is going to be an event that is putting a great deal of strain on our internal resources. We'll have our incident command established at the scene if they feel we're going to need outside jurisdictional help, or say the incident is now moving outside of jurisdictional grounds. Anything that is putting a greater strain where we're going to need outside assistance or anything of that nature, or even a high degree evacuation, we're going to need a lot more coordination in those kind of incidents.
And what sorts of people or agencies are the ones that are calling to action for this center?
So we do have a notification system, and it's predefined and always changing with people's changing titles, and as our vulnerabilities change, we're bringing in more agencies. But as I mentioned, we have ATCO Gas, we have the police, we have the fire department and emergency services, and we have a close relationship with a number of other agencies like agriculture, forestry. We'll bring anyone in that we're going to need, and a lot of it's going to be situation dependent, but we'll do the major stakeholders for sure.
And speaking of situations, what sort of emergencies is Lethbridge and the surrounding area planning for?
So with any municipality, it's important to do a vulnerability analysis, so you actually know what you're susceptible to. Clearly in Lethbridge, we're not going to be doing any hurricane planning or anything like that, but specifically speaking, we do look at our wildfires. We are very prone to that, especially you look at this summer. It's very dry, very little precipitation. We do have, with climate change, you look at things like tornadoes, sudden storms, wind gusts, anything like that. We need to be sure that along with our framework, which is the Municipal Emergency Management Plan, we do have the hazard-specific appendices that, kind of dictate the response, and it all goes back to the hazard vulnerability analysis. We need to bring in outside assistance for that, for the most part, just to find out what we're actually vulnerable to and then plan around that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to plan for things that aren't really likely to happen.
Right, like a hurricane, you're not super worried about that.
I'm not, but you never know, we could have an earthquake or two. So
Sure.
we want to keep an open mind to that for sure. Even the least likely incidents that could still happen still need addressing.
Absolutely. And in the event of an emergency, people, if it gets bad enough, people can tend to be in kind of a panicked situation. So if there is an emergency, who should residents contact?
The nice thing is, in our world, we've got the social media aspect. However, I know not everyone is on board with that, but social media is huge. If we are going to listen to social media, make sure it's credible sources. We want to dispel any rumors, and we do have communications individuals within the ECC. So they will be operating on the city website, city Twitter, city Facebook, providing constant updates. We do have the Alberta Emergency Alert, which we also can control in the Emergency Coordination Center, issuing alerts, updating alerts with everything like that. But it's good to pay attention for sure. If you have any questions and you don't have social media, you can even call 911 or any of the non-emergency lines as well. And I'm sure at that point our communication staff is working with the dispatch staff to generate a generic answer that will accommodate the necessary actions required.
In a worst case scenario, say someone's electricity has gone out, they don't have power and they're stuck, is there still a way that they can get a hold of people?
Hopefully they have cell phones, but again, you never know. We could have an issue where cell phone towers are out. At that point, if we're going to, if the ECC is aware of something like that happening, we're going to take different precautions for warning messages, and this could be police or other agencies going around with a loud hailer, going door to door, trying to get to these people, because we will be aware, hopefully, of these kinds of things going on. If a whole section of the city is out of electricity or any way of communication, we're going to have to, and that's another component of the ECC, is always being able to accommodate the needs of the citizens, and part of that is definitely the warning notifications.
And let's talk a little bit more about the Alberta Emergency Management Agency and what they do. We kind of touched on some of the work they do, but what else do they do for emergency situations?
So for the most part, they do really good work with our training. They provide most of our incident command systems training. Each region of the province does have field officers as well, which are capable to respond and assist where needed. So in the case of our ECC, that would be someone we would invite as well. We'd have our, I believe we have 2 in our region that we would bring in, and they're a wealth of knowledge, as well as, they get right into the ICS structure and provide a position where we can, I guess, allocate our resources effectively.
And what is the Alberta Emergency Act?
The Alberta Emergency Act, actually, I think we've got the Emergency Management Act. So this is something put on through, I guess, a statute enacted by the federal government under Public Safety Canada. It basically defines and articulates the authority and responsibilities of a municipality in the event of a disaster and emergency management as a whole. So it articulates that municipalities need to have emergency management agencies in place, committees in place. It defines how you would, state a state of local emergency and the authorities around that and how to terminate when that happens as well. It basically defines the onus on the municipality, what you need to do for your residents, and when certain things like a state of local emergency is enacted, where the responsibilities change. So say we have a state of local emergency and we have a mandatory evacuation, it's now the role of the municipality to take care of these residents who are displaced. So we need to always keep that in our mindset when we're going through our planning, and make sure our plans reflect that.
And now if there ever were to be an evacuation, take me through the steps that would take place for residents.
Well, first of all, we would probably be in a state of local emergency at that point, so we would have our authorities actually issuing that. If you have the Alberta Emergency Alert Act, you'd probably be getting constant alerts and everything. But again, the ECC would go back to what are the warning mechanisms we can use, what's going to be the most appropriate. Are we going to do it over social media? Are we going to go loud hailer, door to door? And we're going to have to reach citizens. And what it will be is we have the MEMP, the Municipal Emergency Management Plan, which articulates the roles and responsibilities, but we'll also probably have other planning with the police service to make sure that, everything is coinciding and that it's efficient. But it will be, the biggest part is communicating it effectively and making sure people are, accommodating. It's the onus on us to really sell it. People may not want to leave, but we have to really push it if it's getting mandatory.
And what do people like myself in that emergency situation, what do residents need to do if they have time to prepare for an evacuation?
First of all, grab your family, anyone else that's in your household. A lot of people have pets, and that's a big component to evacuation, whether people do it or not. So if you're able to pre-plan and make sure that you're able to take your furry companion with you, it's going to make it a lot easier, because a lot of people, you look at New Orleans, a lot of the shelters weren't taking animals, so people were refusing to leave. So that's another portion we need to look at when we're evacuating. Are we setting up shelters that are accommodating everyone's needs? Are we creating animal-specific shelters or shelters where people with pets can specifically go? We need to look at a lot of avenues with that, but the big thing is, if you have a go bag handy, but the big one is family and pets. Make sure you get everyone out and everyone's accounted for.
And how prepared, in your opinion, do you think people are for emergencies? Do a lot of people kind of have the attitude, it's never going to happen to me?
I think the mindset is a little bit changing. I'd say it's kind of 50-50 at this point. Public education is becoming a bigger deal, and that's because we're able to use windows of opportunity. So we look at the Waterton Fire, for instance, the hurricanes in the United States. These are huge windows where we have the public's attention, and we need to use those to educate. So whether that's pushing the role of 72-hour kits, emergency family plans, and our own internal emergency plans, it's huge. We can get it on the political agenda, and it just opens the public eye. So I think, sadly, it's because more disasters are happening that it's on the radar, and it is on the rise, but it's still fairly low at this point.
Okay, and now let's talk a little bit more about your role again. What do you enjoy about your role and working with these different emergency services?
I think the best part about it, and what the draw to the role for me was the moving parts. I kind of like the overseeing of each section and moving different agencies to where they need to go, and I guess making sure they have all they need. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like, I picture it as Tetris. It's always just trying to find that next piece that's going to fit with the previous one.
I like that. That's a good answer. Thanks for joining us, Luke, and we'll have more on Upfront right after the break.